Welcome in, everyone. This is our flow recap for the week of 2/18/2025 to 2/21/2025. Short week. We were off Monday for President's Day. So as always, we're going to look at the full range of the flow, kind of what the whales did, kind of look at some entries, exits. Got some really good, unusual examples this week too. So, and again, as always too, I like to show everybody that might be tuning in for the first time. Everything we go over here is always posted in real time in here. Nothing gets edited. We're recapping everything that's called out. So let's kind of get started here. So first up on 2/18, we have the ARKG 321.33 calls. So this one's a little interesting because this made a pretty good intraday move here actually. So let's pop this back to the 18th here. Pop this to a one-day move. So this was our flow that came in. It came in right at open. If we look at the flow here, you can see, let me pop the results down. We can see this was a flow alert. And what I see right away here is, you can see that IV kind of sticking up here. Keep an eye on that ask side, that bid-ask spread here. Your spot is coming in at the ask. You can follow in this IV up. The one thing here is we see a small little drop in the IV, but we're still coming in at that ask price. So I kind of like to keep watching here to see what happens with that IV. If that IV continued to decrease, I would probably pass on it. But we can see that IV pop back up here to that 50.08, and we can see that spot increase again and that bid-ask increase. So you're seeing that ascending fill essentially and that IV pop back up. And when we look at this, this actually made a pretty quick move here, and you can see a lot of that volume still here. So interesting to see because we still got 27 days on these. So you can see these came in at 91, and I like to look for at least about a 15% return on a trade. Again, if I'm at 10%, so this goes kind of more seasoned traders. If you're newer, this is a very good habit to get into. What I personally do, if I'm up 10%, I'll set my stops at break even, because if you keep compounding, 10% wins too, because you see a lot of 300, 400% wins. That's usually not the case. What you're going to see, you're not going to usually exit at the peak. It's just learning to scale out and all that. So you see here, so that 91 was our entry, and these actually ran pretty quick here and hit a high of 113, and we can see that here actually they hit a high of 120 on the day, which would give us from that point, I have 0.95 is the contract price, up to that 120. That's about a 26% return there. So again, and keep an eye on the time here. So these came in at 8:30 on Central Time. These were running from 8:30 all the way up to about 9 o'clock and started to kind of pull back. That's enough time to start adjusting up stops, especially if you're up 20% or so. So those contracts moving from that 0.95 to 120. Palantir on the 18th. So let's pop back to the 18th here. So we can see these 516, 180 calls coming in. Look at the raw flow as always. Can see right when that whale starts to come in, we can see that IV increasing all the way up pretty much. Repeated hits ascending fill. And again, that's just telling you that spot price is increasing as the flow is coming in. So we keep following that up here. Again, that IV kind of drops a little bit here, but again, we had that ascending fill. And now let's look at how that trade moved. So we had we'll say 1,000 contracts just to make it easy. So we can see we had 2,300 on the day. So it looks like we had about 500 come in there, about 200 there, kind of some little chunks. So not seeing, it gets a little messy here, but we had about most of that volume carry over into open interest on the 19th. So let's pop this to Friday and look at that full range. So these actually would have made that a better intraday move. So there's your entry. These topped out at 450. We got 470 here actually on the 19th for your high. So you can see we kind of ran up that same day and then We were up pretty much in choppy there on the 19th before that news broke about the PLTR CEO selling shares. So interesting to see that, but those did move from, got that 439, 440, and these ended up hitting 465. So not a huge return. They were up 5%, but it looks like that whale probably kind of started to take some off here. I have this down as a loss, actually, as a 7% loss. I have them taking them off here about 439 or so, but these did hit 5%. Not a huge return, but still a little bit on the positive side. So up next we had the 228 LUNR 26 calls. So this is a good example because this whale actually exited the same day. So when we come back here and look at the 18th, this is why I always tell people not all ask side is a buy. You have to check that open interest. So let's first look down here. So here's your 18th. We had 2,300 contracts traded on the day. We only had 239 carryover. You look at this candle, so 950 there at 150. We had about 945 there, so about pretty much the same. So that's really key there. This whale actually sold these for an 11% loss. And let's take a peek at the flow here. So you can see IV increasing when that whale initially came in. That was your big entry there. Now if we look at the exit candle, you can see that IV is still up there, and we're coming in at the ask. So it can fool you sometimes. This is why watching that volume and open interest is key. If you see something like this come in, I will automatically make a note, something where I can check that open interest immediately in the morning, because this almost looks like it's a double down, but clearly based on that open interest to that volume the next day on the 19th there, it was not. They closed the ask same day. So I have those at the whale, filling those at 150 and cutting those at 133 for an 11% loss. Next up, we have the 228 AMD 118 calls. Let's pop this back. Here is our entry here on the 18th. Had 2,100 contracts, 167 for 366K. We look at the flow. Let me do this in here. Can see, so this one's a little bit more hidden, where it's not coming in as like repeated fill or anything. So you can see our 1,000 contracts both coming in there. So notice when that contracts coming in at the ask, good size, good premium, that IV spikes. Again, contracts coming in here, IV spikes from that little lower IV. A little bit below the ask, but pretty much right at the ask, so you can kind of figure it's an ask side hit. So this one is a little bit, so some of these contracts, obviously, like AMD, Amazon, Apple, you're going to get a little more liquidity. Traders trade those a lot more than normal. So we're looking at the 18th here. So we had about half of those contracts carry over. So again, this whale was about 2,200 contracts. Can't for sure tell if this whale held or not. Visually, I'm going to say yes, they held, because you can see we had that little spike there for, we'll say 1,000, and then 2,200, so about 3,200-ish. So obviously that other flow mixed in here there. Then we see this red candle here at 190 and 192. To me, kind of just doing a little visual here, this looks like it's probably this whale and this whale exiting this whale and this whale there. So this whale I have exiting at a high of 222, and it looks like they actually got out here pretty much near the top, 190-ish, but we did hit a high of 222 on the day. Looks like we hit pretty close to that on the 20th as well. So those running from 167 to 222 for 32%. And let's move on to LRCX. So this one's a little So this one's another good example here. Let's pop this back to the 18th. So we had some bid side flow here, and again, looking at the 18th. So again, another odd one here where we see a lot of volume, but only about a third of that carrying over. So you can see, we'll say 6,000, make it easy. About 55, so that's about 12 there. So, I mean, you're getting a lot of volume, kind of, not a lot of volume, but just kind of some little ticks there. But, I mean, 100 contracts here, it's going to add up. I mean, 1,000 right there, 443 there, 200, you start to add up. So, again, really interesting one because I have these filled at 199. So, this is when we actually got in at that 210, 199. I have 199 marked here. That was the call out price. Whoops, let's go back here. I wanted to pop this back 7 days. So really interesting. So this was that whale. You can see we kind of, I mean, we slightly moved up. We hit 244 on the day, but we did end up hitting your high of the week here on the 20th at 528. So those did run 165%, but it looks like they might have did a little manipulation there. And obviously we have some multi-leg here. Whoops. Have a little multi-leg here. So probably some other stuff going on in there. But obviously that's why I say you got to keep an eye on that volume and open interest because it's not always going to carry over. So those LRCXs 199 to a high of 528. And again, we're doing the full range. So it's 165.33. All right, up next, we have the Uber put. So again, another good example. We have a lot of good examples this week of kind of some odd stuff. So again, here's your original entry, 170. And then we had some no side flow come in. And we can see it wasn't a multi-leg, so somebody didn't roll anything or do anything there. So again, keep an eye on that volume and open interest here. 13,000, majority of that carries over. We had 6,400 there, another 6,000 there. So about 12.5 or so. Obviously, we have some other volume throughout the day here, but that volume carrying over. And when we look at the no side, it actually comes in as a cross trade. I will usually ignore cross trades, but obviously that came in, so it's something you got to kind of look at. So I'm looking at this. We have 6,000 contracts, pretty close to the spot price, or the spot's pretty close to the ask. So again, without seeing that open interest the next day, we don't know what's going on there. They could have exited. Don't know. But if we come back and look at Friday now, you can see so that 170, these actually hit a high of 252 on yesterday on Friday. So those running from 171 to 252, 47.37% on those. Then we had Google calls. Again, this is a good example of why you should always be adjusting up stops. Here is our entry at 328. This one was also posted on X. 328 hit a high of 480 there on the 19th. We were even about 465 there on the 20th. So plenty of time to adjust stops up. But these running from that 325 to that high of 480 there, 47.69% on those. Now, something curious to watch here, and again, this is why I say always adjust stops up, because it looks like this whale is ending up selling these for a loss on Friday. A lot of volume here on Friday. We won't know until Monday what that changes to, but winner on our end. Intel calls. These actually made another nice little intraday move, so I want to pop this back to the 18th. So we got in these at 39. So this candle right here. So what's interesting on this, obviously you can see that net call premium was up, a lot of call volume. We had 3 big spikes in ask side volume. So now typically if I saw these 2, again like our other example where we saw the 2 that were about the same size, we don't know if they're exiting at the ask, but then we have that third bar come in. So to me, they're obviously adding here. So we've got these filled at 39.40. These actually ran up and hit 54 on the day, I believe. Hit a high of 54 on the day. And even they were up on the next day. So if you swung those, obviously a lot of time to get profits taken there. So another good little winner there for us. And I want to show everybody. I just like to see that full move. So again, obviously coming into the end of the day there, spike kind of up, and then we kind of chopped a little bit next day and all that. But good win for us there. So 39 to 54 for 38.46 on those. And then we had the Uber call sells. So obviously when you're selling calls, puts, I always look at it, if you're selling calls, you're neutral to bearish. If you are selling puts, you're neutral to bullish, because theta is your friend on contracts. You're trying to collect that premium, so that stock could just move sideways and you can still profit. So that's kind of why I tell people be careful if you see bid side stuff unless you're actually selling premium. So let's take a peek at that bid side flow here. So again, let's do it like this. So again, looking at that IV starts to drop once we get towards the end here. Obviously, we're looking at that fill price here coming in at the bid, but you see that IV dropping there, so sign of a call sell. And we can see they came in at 475. Looks like we closed at 379 yesterday. So that whale collecting about 20% of the profits so far, or premium so far, and still 83 days on those. So on to the 19th. So we got this 3.7 SPY 602 puts. So again, this whale exited a little early. So we can see 314 here was the fill. Pop the results. So again, you can see right when that whale starts to come in, repeated hits ascending fill. See that IV come in. IV's increasing. You see that spot increasing in there as well. IV increasing. Good sign of a buy. Then we look at this flow here. 384 looks like that they took profits there. You see that IV decreasing now, and you see that spot decreasing. Because usually when you're trying to get out of trades, you're trying to get out with profit. So quickest way out is at the bid side. So you can see that IV decreasing. Perfect example there. Whale did miss out because these hit 748 yesterday. So that whale did sell these at 384. And we can see that reflected there in the open interest update on the 21st there. But these contracts running for a full range of 136.71%. X, this made a nice intraday move here. Now we're seeing multi-legs, so I'm going to assume they're probably rolling those. This was our whale entry here. And this one was interesting because when these came in, let me pop this. So when these came in, there was a chunk of them that came in above the ask. Let me see. I think I have it. Should be right. Okay, here we go. So that's where that whale came in. So you can see IV was up when it came in. 10,000 contracts. A little wider bid ask, but you're coming in right at that ask side pretty much, so showing aggression. I don't know if it's going to let me go back. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see below that. But this was that trade that came. So that was the trade that came in. Floor trade mid cap. Looked good. And when we look at this, so we'll come back to the 19th quick. So there's your whale entry. Made a nice steady climb up same day to a high of 194. It looks like most of that carried over. Obviously, it looks like they rolled them or did something yesterday with them. But running on our end from 160 up to that 194, giving us 21.25%. These RGTIs are next. So interesting here again, these ones made a quick move here, and I want to pop this back to the 19th. So let's see. So here's our whale, 2,200 contracts. You can see we moved up here from 50, actually hit 67 here, 70 for a high. And again, keep an eye on the time here, 10:30 all the way up to 10:45, 11, about a half hour. Enough time to start adjusting up stops. That's the one thing. I mean, you have a half hour. You should be paying attention to your trades that you're in if you're taking them. So those running from 50 to, I just have it at 67 here for a high, even though we got 70. So those hit 34%. Looks like they're still in. Obviously some volume yesterday, so curious to see. Would have to check that on Monday. PLTR puts, everybody knows how these things ran. I want to just show everybody the 19th. So here we are, 1,600, 1,000, so 2,600 contracts. So this whale actually closed these the same day. We had 7,000 contracts traded there on the day, only 722 carried over. So that whale probably exited here about 1360, same day. And just kind of popping 7 days out. Obviously, we hit that high there of 25.19 here on the 20th. So that was a 490% max return. Visa, we came in here at 155, 155. These hit the high here of actually 467 on Friday. You're probably not going to swing something that's expiring the next day, so we're going with that 220 high. So we hit 457 there. So that's 191% on the Visa 221, 352, 5 puts. PayPal calls. These were from our flow and charts. I have to just pull this in quick here. All right, so PayPal. So this one I had two ideas with. Obviously, this was a flow and charts one, so this was a trade that I did end up taking. Obviously, we had Gamma. I have little breakdowns on these. So this one, you can see I would look for a small pullback to 77.30. We didn't even hit that momentum entry. We had a momentum and a small pullback entry there, so 77.30 was our entry. So these were about near the lows of the day on there. So I have the 82.5s moving from 114 to 134 there for 17%, and these bounced 3 or 4 times here. So I have the date here, so you can see this is from the 20th. It's marked under the 19th because these are pulled from the flow and contracts and done on the night. So you can see our 77.30 bounce. Plenty of time to secure profits on something like this. And then next up, here we have another flow and charts one, which let me just pull up here. So these were the TXN whales. So we had 2 large contracts come in, cup and handle there on the daily. This was how our flow looked here. I wanted this one as a momentum entry. We didn't get that. It ran right away in the morning. I did run. If you would have just chased it open, though, I've got 362 there for an opening. Let me pop this here. Yeah, I've got like 360. I did 362. I went a little higher there. If you would have chased that as a momentum, they ended up hitting 655 yesterday. So I went with the chasing price of 362 because that original entry was 230. So 362 would have gave you a time after open if you did chase it. Up to 655, that's 66% on those. So that other TXN I'm just leaving there. Comp, these made a good move. Again, 25, chopped most of the day. Can see most of that volume carrying over. Hit a high of 55 yesterday, so 120% on those. CEG, these were put sells, so obviously a little different here. That whale's probably sweating a little bit right now because those puts are up there, but as long as CEG doesn't get below that 250, they'll be happy. So something to watch there. Right now, this one's down. UAL, the 321.97 5 put. So again, 460. We hit a high of 740 here on the 21st. BABA, these made a nice intraday move here. I have these coming in at 340 here, 337, 340. Hit a high of 405, giving us a 19% intraday move. Tesla, this is a good example. This whale came in at 1034 above the ask. Let's see if I can quickly find that. So you can see 1040 way above the ask here, so that stuck out immediately. But then it looks like we had that whale cut here at some point here. I would have to check that on Monday, but it looks like that whale cut. I have them cutting at 1006. I went with the little higher end one there. So they cut for a 3% loss. PDD, the 328s, these made an intraday move here, 167, hit 220 on the day. So 31.74%. The SPY puts, this is a good example. It looks like this whale sold intraday, and we were doing this one actually on the webinar. So 360 was the fill, hit a high of 715 there on the day. So 98% on those, but it looks like that whale kind of took some off at 464, 507, and 529. APLD. And I don't tend to spend a lot of time on these last ones either, just because a lot of them have a lot of time on them and they just came in yesterday on Friday. So APLD, the 321.15 calls came in at 72. Looks like we're closing about 52 here, so that whale's down 27%, but obviously 27 days on those. MU, this will be an interesting one because we had 1,000 contracts come in here. Total volume of 2,300 on the day. Closing about 189, so that whale's down 24%. So 101 call, not that far out of the money. So interesting to see what happens with that one. Coin, these things printed right away. 445, and then we ended up hitting a high of 1173. Going to assume they took profits here at 866 and 1029. Spreads are a little wider on coins, so they're probably getting out at the ask. But those hitting that high of 1173 for 163% intraday move. Amazon, this one hasn't really moved. Obviously 83 days, 380 on those. Closing at 365, down 3.95%. So pretty big premium on these, 2.4 million. Looking at that IV, obviously IV drops a little bit there. Then kind of just pops back up. Where I see that, okay, that was where that dropped. But again, seeing that wider bid-ask spread there with the spot coming in there. And then we have the CMG 321.55 calls. So interesting here, 65. Hit 67, nothing there. Closing at 61 there, so they're down 6%, obviously 27 days. About 7% out of the money there, so some time. But that is all I have for this week's flow recap video. Again, if you're interested in trying unusual whales, I do have a discount code available. If you're interested in joining Stock Hub, obviously everything in here is called out, so everything fully transparent, unlike a lot of other people that don't recap their stuff. But that's all I have. Have a great weekend, everyone.